Sasso, me se come tonton preko. Come tonton preko. Sasso, come tonton preko. Nani shamne die, demonstronko.
This advert is FDA approved.
Hello and good evening and welcome to Ghana Connect. Tonight on the show, a very big social conversation. You can call it legal if you want, but really, it is social. Women are told to give everything to a marriage. Everything. Their dreams, their finances, their bodies, their years. They are expected to invest completely and hold nothing back. But the moment a marriage collapses, then none of that counts. That marriage is not an investment, as the judge said in this case, that they cannot expect to get back what they put in. The divorce settlement between businessman Richard Ni Amakwe and Joanna Kwe has cracked something open this week. It has forced the conversation this country has been avoiding for a very long time. What are the property rights of spouses in Ghana? And why, after all these years, has Parliament still not passed a legislation to regulate this, despite a clear constitutional obligation to do so? That alone, some have said, is a dereliction of a duty, a big dereliction of duty. But let's talk about this judgment, because some of what Justice Dogos put in writing, some have said is genuinely shocking. The suggestion that a man can conceal property during marriage, and because his wife was unaware of it, simply does not qualify as marital property. That a woman must prove knowledge of an asset she was deliberately kept from knowing about. And then there is the comments about Madame Joanna Kwe's physical appearance. The observation that she is attractive enough to remarry whenever she pleases. What does that have to do with the settlement of marital property? Some have raised those issues as well. And then the final order, 300,000 cedis for 16 years of marriage to a self-proclaimed millionaire. And then 5,000 cedis a month for 3 children. So tonight, we are putting all the questions on the table. Are women in Ghana being systematically cheated out of what is rightfully theirs in marriage? Or as the judge intimated, are some women entering marriages as a calculated investment, eyes already on the exit, waiting to cash out when it's time to do so? It's a daring question, but we need to have it right here on Ghana Connect after this. This is still Ghana Connect. My name is Kwaku Asante, and I wish I could play this song. It's one of my favorite songs that by Erama Bedu, but it's time to introduce my guest. Some brilliant minds who are connecting with us on this very important matter. As always, Kala Olympio is a lawyer, and she's connecting with us on this very important conversation. Carla, it's been a while. It's good to welcome you back to the show.
Good evening, Kwaku. It's always a pleasure.
Brilliant. And then Franque. For those of you who follow Franque on social media, I mean, he brings the heat on every single issue. Franque is in studio with us. Franque, it's good to have you connect with us. Thank you. And then Shaiba Abdul Rashid is a Ghanaian postgraduate student. She's based in the UK. She's chilling somewhere in Stirling in the cold and also in the very warm water that is coming up. She's enjoying all of it. Shaiba, it's good to have you connect with us.
Thank you, Kwaku, but I'm not really chilling, but thanks.
Well, we see your snaps. David Quay is a civil society player. He will connect with us. So we have two people who are called Quay. They are not related to Richard Nyama Quay for disclosure's sake. All right. So let's start from the very basics that will open up into a very big conversation about property rights of spouses. Carla, because you're a lawyer, I want to start from you. I mean, this judgment, I don't know if you've read it fully, but the snippets that we've seen around, how have you related to it? Some of the very highlights that the judge put in that judgment.
Kwaku, yes, I'm a lawyer. I'm not a divorce lawyer. And to be honest, up until I was invited onto this program, of course, I'd seen the snippets on social media and kind of, a couple of blogs, but I tend to steer clear away, from these kind of obsessive discussions about other people's relationships and marriages. But in this case, obviously, there's many things that come up. And I think that I was not able to read the judgment. I have read the snippets that have been published on some platforms, some legal platforms. And I have to say that I agree with the commentary that takes issue with some of the judge's comments. Whether or not you agree with the actual distribution. I mean, a comment that the woman is beautiful and can get married again. What is the context of that comment? The comment appears to be suggesting that you don't need that much money because you can marry some other man for money. I mean, that is the implication over there, right? Which, would kind of tend to show the mindset of the judge, which is rather alarming. And then there was another comment that the judge made, which was that he is attempting to discourage, basically people rushing for divorce and seeing marriage as an investment. But number one, marriage is actually an investment. It is an economic investment for both parties. It's an emotional investment. It's a contractual arrangement. A civil marriage is a legal and contractual arrangement. It is actually an investment. So, so already the kind of the driving premises behind some of the decisions taken seem to be disturbing. And, for somebody who, in the recent past, when a lot of us came to know of him, Mr. Nyama Quay, I had not heard of him before his big party that was a year or two ago, who, as you said, touts himself publicly as a billionaire, talks about how he came from humble beginnings, was married from young for 16 years, spent tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, on a birthday party. It would appear that, in that context, he could have afforded to give his ex-wife of 16 years, with whom he has 3 children, more than 1/3 of a house.
Interesting. And let me come to you, Franco. You've heard Carla, and I've seen a couple of comments that have come up on social media. This argument about investment or not, is the settlement, the amount of money and everything that is being given, is it enough or not? I wonder where you stand and whether or not you think justice was done in that case. Of course, there's an appeal pending, so we are not going in there, but the substance of the judgment, as we've seen it, we are allowed to comment on it. I think there's an issue with the microphone with our guest, so we'll fix that pretty shortly, and then we'll hear from him pretty shortly what exactly he makes of this conversation that we're having. So let me hear from you now.
All right, so thank you. So I just heard the comments from the legal practitioner. Generally, when you talk about alimony, it comes to play when these divorces happen. And the concept of alimony is based on the fact that when you leave or move out of marriage, you shouldn't go below the standard that you were when you were in the marriage. It looks at trying to maintain the standard of the person so that you don't lack after leaving marriage. Now, as lawyers and then people, law students or people in the law fraternity, we have to understand that when issues like this come up, we need to look at the circumstances surrounding them. Now, the lady in question, that is the woman, that is RNAQ, from what we observed, is actually working. And from what we are told, she's doing so well in life. And so when it comes to the distribution of the whatever we are, sorry, can I? Yeah, please go ahead. All right, so thank you. So now I just had something over me. So all right, so the point I want to make. All right, sorry. All right, so the point I wanted to make is that the comment that the judge made about the woman with respect to the fact that she's attractive and all has to do with assessing her to know the amount of alimony to be given to her. You know, if the judge is supposed to look at that amount, there's supposed to be some standards that the judge should consider. The judge is supposed to look at her ability to. Sorry.
No, you can speak. Please go ahead. Well, we'll fix it. I think we have a little challenge with that, so we'll get into that pretty shortly. Let me get to Shaiba. You've seen. Well, Kala, what did you say?
I said, so if the judge considered her ugly, would he have awarded her more? I don't get it.
Yeah, well, that's also.
But anyway, please go ahead.
Yes, Shaiba, let me hear from you on what you make of the conversation that we've had on this.
I think for me, I'm going to speak from a very social issue. And Kwaku, we've had countless conversations about this, and you know how I feel about the way that marriage is propagated, for lack of a better word, to women. And for a very long time, it has been this thing where women are kind of preached to go into marriage giving their all. And so I find it very unfair that when women give their all, help build men, or maybe just help build a family in general, and yet are not expected to kind of reap from where they sow. And it comes back to this social conversation that has been happening where very few cases of women getting sort of benefit from marriages that they've been a part of for years in other countries has sparked social conversation about how women are getting into marriages for I don't know, payout of some sort. So I don't think we can completely remove these social clues from this judgment that we are hearing. And it's very heartbreaking to see that as a society, the people that give us the most, which is women, are still the people that we relegate to the back and treat the most poorly. Because why in 17 years would a judge assume that this woman has made no contributions whatsoever to the wealth that David Quay, if that's his name, has David, I'm sorry, has amassed. And they have kids. Who do we think has been taking care of these kids while this man goes out to do business? So I think the compounding interest of it for me is that the labor that women put in society is usually considered almost like, because it's a natural of some sort, it's unrewarded. Like, oh, of course she did it. That's your duty. Of course she took care of the kids while he was doing business. That's her duty. And so that she was doing business on her own, as the other panelists mentioned, and is doing really well, has nothing to do with the fact that she has obviously contributed to the wealth that she is being denied now. And I think maybe this isn't important to the conversation, but this habit of men, women being with men for a very long time, and then once they success, they tend to find the women that fit their status, should tell a lot of women that suffering with men, and I hope that women are taking a lot of caution from this that like building with people, if you want to build, please build yourself and not like trying to build with someone, because obviously the court in Ghana doesn't think that you deserve anything. And so if marriage is not an investment, then people shouldn't be investing in it.
Frank, please, let's hear from you now.
Like I was saying earlier, the commentary that the judge made in respect of the fact that marriage is not an investment, I think was misconceived by the people, by many. You understand? He said that in a context. Now, what the judge was trying to say is that marriage is not just like a financial investment that you can just put your money in there and expect so much profit at the end. So the focus.
But it really is, though, David. It really is. This is years of your life. Of course, it's an investment. It's a time investment. It doesn't have to be just money.
So can I finish, please? So the point is that it is not a venture where you enter with the expectation that you move out and then make so much money. He wasn't disputing the fact that women contribute so much when it comes to marriage. So it was in context. So he was talking about investments where you go into the bank and then you invest into treasury bills, expecting that at the end of 91 days, or let's say at the end of the year, this is how much profit you are getting. But the law, even Section 20 of Act 367, recognizes contributions by spouses, and all of us are aware that in this divorce case, the lady was awarded so much beyond the 300,000 Ghana cedis that she was given. She was given 2 cars.
As against the man that owns a private jet, owns Rolls Royces.
2 old cars. All of old. One of them was a 2010 car. In
the realm of law, we should be looking at actuality against perception. What is actual in reality? When she went to the court, what did she request? Again, what is the man?
She requested 50 million Ghana cedis, and she got 300,000 cedis.
And what is the man's known worth? It is, people go out there and write so many things. I can give you an example. There was one time this famous actor, Kofi Adjonino came out one time and mentioned that he goes on the net and people say is worth this amount, 10 million Ghana cedis. Meanwhile, you know why I buy my watch? It's the same place he buys his watch. And I had that discussion with him. So people have a perception, but in law, it's about facts. It's about what is actual. So when you go to the court, it's about what the man's worth is. And the ability of the maintenance, the amount that is being given as maintenance, is it something that is realistic? Can that be able to cater for the 3 kids? And again,
because you've gone there, I just want to ask you, 5,000 cedis a month for 3 children, that is an average of 1,600, 1,700 Ghana cedis.
Yes, please.
Frank, I'm sure you don't have kids. But
no, I don't.
You certainly can take care of a kid with 1,700 Ghana cedis in a month in Accra, especially given that RNAQ, of course, at least he has put himself out there as someone who has means. He has, in fact, a food bank where people who don't have the means can go there and eat. He drives he writes a private jet. He does events where he brings top musicians to come in there. Even for a very average man of means, would they be spending 1,700 Ghana cedis a month on their kid, let alone someone like RNAQ?
Thank you. So if we look at it from that angle, then we oversimplify the issue, because all of the things that we are talking about, the flashy things, the airplane, the parties that he had, from as far as I know, it was organized by his company. And we are aware of the fact that it's a separate legal entity. But for Richard Quay as a person, looking at what he's earning, and please can I again, I always say this, when it comes to marriage, the responsibility of grooming children is a shared one. It's a shared responsibility between the mother and the child. And as far as I know, the woman is actively working. She's also doing well. Now, beyond the 5,000 Ghana cedis, which is supposed to be the maintenance fee, is paying their fees. Health is taking care of their health in terms of accommodation. He's doing that. He's providing transportation as against the 2 cars that were given to the wife. So if we sit and say that the 5,000 is not enough, let's look at Richard Quay as an average Ghanaian man, because I'm sure when they went to the court looked at it from that lens. The court didn't look at it from the companies, because he's just a normal shareholder. And even with that, when you go to court, if you didn't disclose that, the court would actually work with what you came with, what is known to the court. So based on his worth, per the proceedings, the defense and everything, 5,000 should be fine. Thank you.
Yeah, well, interesting. So, Kala, I think you wanted to make some intervention.
Yeah, I mean, so there was a comment about alimony, and alimony being, supposed to ensure that the spouse who has less means is maintained in the same standard to which they've become accustomed. I'm not sure that's actually a principle in Ghanaian law. I mean, we see that principle a lot in various states in the USA, and we've seen some huge settlements, which, to be fair, a lot of the men commenting about how, no woman is going to marry them and take their money will never get near that level of funds, let's be realistic. But in Ghana, that's actually not the law. I mean, the law, I think at some point took from the constitution that it was 50-50. More recently, there's been a Supreme Court judgment that's moved away from that. It does recognize domestic contributions, and it does talk about equity, and using that to kind of divide it up. But let's not forget, I mean, the judge made a comment about how, discouraging people from seeing marriage as an investment, which I said that, marriage obviously has to be an investment. But let's also look at history, where many, many women historically in Ghana and elsewhere were kicked out of marriages, left by men with nothing. It was very easy to leave a woman with absolutely nothing, unless based on the man's good graces, right? So the law came in to actually protect such women. So those women could be abandoned, and yeah, maybe if it was a kind and generous man, he would settle her with whatever he wanted. If she had maybe an influential family or wealthy family, they could take care of her, or they could convince him to give him more. But the law has come in actually to protect women. Now, before anybody says that it can happen to men too, yes, it can happen to men, but most of the time, the vast majority of the time, it's women who are left abandoned, right? And it seems to me that in many cases, most men would prefer that situation where they can decide to leave a woman with nothing or with next to nothing, if they choose, right? And then if they choose, they choose what they're going to give. This lady argued, she asked for 50 million. Perhaps 50 million was excessive. Perhaps he doesn't have 50 million to give. But between 50 million and 300,000, and like I said, even look at the context of this gentleman's party that he had. He even had billboards at the junction near my house, which must have cost thousands of dollars. That one, there were billboards all over town. Aside from the party, I don't know about this assertion about his business organizing his birthday party. I have my concerns about that. I don't know the facts, but business organizing a birthday party, that would be concerning. Mingling business funds with personal funds, if that's the case. He flew in celebrities. I mean, he had several houses. According to the information, the excerpts from the judgment that I've seen, he has a number of houses. Why would the judge not give this lady the whole house? He said 1/3 of the house, and then actually said some of the rooms and a corridor or a sitting room or something like that. I mean, why on earth? This is a woman who was married to him for 16 years from when they were young. And this gentleman has come out in public saying that when he was young, he didn't have money. So they obviously did build together. He also argues that she's a co-founder of his business and a director of his business. Again, not having read all the facts of the case and knowing every aspect of what he actually does have and whether or not she has shares, perhaps her argument to take shares in the business or not would not necessarily come under the divorce settlement. Because if you're a shareholder in the company, you don't need a divorce settlement to get those, to get your funds out of those shares. But if she was married to him when he was young, by his own accounts, he did not have money then, so that means he must have built a lot of his money while he was married to her. They weren't married for just 2 years. They have 3 children together, and even if she didn't work at all, it was completely focused on domestic affairs and raising the children, that is worth more than 300,000 if this gentleman has the kind of net worth that he likes to tell us that he has.
Interesting. Sheb, I'll come to you, but I want to take a few things with you, Frank. I think you want to make an intervention. Please say that. And then also talk to me about, separating it a little bit from even RNAQ. Do you not see the real issue that a lot of women talk about, the struggle, because you see, when a woman marries a man, a lot of the domestic chores, as we know in our settings, a lot of the domestic work is done by the woman. A woman sometimes has to give up her own dreams, sometimes to support the man because they think they are building together. This concept of together for better, for worse and everything. I mean, I have seen some court documents that I'll refer to at some point where there's an admission about when RNAQ returned from London in 2009, the kind of savings that Madame Joanna Quay may have supported it. But we'll get into that. And I don't want to make this conversation so legalese. But the concerns about a lot of women who do a lot that are not quantifiable, but they do a lot. And that is why the courts have always stressed that the properties gotten during marriage are usually assumed or presumed to be marital property until a party can show that, listen, I did this on my own. Do you not see the struggle and why so many women feel better that they are not just being treated fairly? And I've seen a lot of comments on Facebook which you have taken on and kind of saying that, listen, the woman has been completely treated unfair in this matter.
All right, thank you. So one thing that I would like us to draw our minds close to is the fact that whatever people do, they do that for a reason. We have to put things into perspective when we are having such arguments. In the past, we could say that our parents, in the past where we didn't have washing machines, we didn't have maids and all those things, we had our parents, especially our mothers, doing a lot of these chores. In recent times, you and I would attest to the fact that the kind of ladies that we have will tell you point blank. Just a few years when I wanted to marry one lady, she told me she categorically mentioned things that she wasn't going to do as a wife. And I understood it that she wasn't going to be a housewife. In fact, I don't want my wife to be a housewife. And again, she made it a point to me. So with such a woman, we had plans of getting a maid when we should make a child. Now, the only, sacrifice this woman would have made would be the child during the pregnancy stage, carrying the baby throughout. That is what the man can do. But I am coming from a home where I was groomed so well. So any woman that comes into my life always attests to the fact that I'm very good. I'm more than a man because I cook, I wash together with them and all of that. All of us were not there when these two people were together. We can't tell what efforts Richard put in domestically. I'm not disputing the efforts of the woman, but things have changed. In this generation, the women do not buy into the traditional idea of marriage, but they always want to rig the traditional idea of benefits. And that is something that we shouldn't push. But for fairness, our laws have been protecting women over the period. You and I know in Mensa where the law says that it should be 50-50. Article 22 has given everyone equal rights when it comes to sharing of property. PNDC law 1 also protects women. Now when the man is no more, instead of the family, those times family just comes in. So the law itself is protecting the women already. And I'm telling you, see, let's put the law aside. When it comes to dealing with people, I'm telling you, when you are kind, people would return the gesture. We are on set, but let me say this: I'm not sure Richard doesn't know what he's doing. Let's give him some, because he's grown enough, over 40 years, and this is when you listen to him speak to people. He has so much knowledge. Do you think such a man who is well built, who is well groomed, refined, understanding, would just decide not to give the wife anything? Would even decide, because he was even arguing to give 2,000 as maintenance? Do you think he would just wake up one day and decide that he wants to do that? It tells you that there's more.
Well, people can be wicked.
It tells you that there's more to it. But why would someone just be wicked? It means that there's some hurt. And so we need to find the root cause. What may have been the cause? Because as I sit here, if my woman has not hurt me and I have that much money, I'm not sure I'll just decide to give her so little.
You don't know Chris P.K. The stories I've heard about him, the gentleman.
I understand there are exceptions, but all things being equal,
man. He doesn't do anything for
all things being equal, no man would decide to neglect his children. No man born of a woman would decide to neglect his children.
But if you offer in your settlement, regardless of whatever your wife may have done, and because Madame Joanna Quay filed for petition, and RNAQ filed a counter, so he also asked for the dissolution of the marriage, and offered to give 2,000 cedi for the 3 kids for their upkeep.
Sure.
So some of that, but please hold it there for me, and let me come to Shaiba. So it's a bigger societal issue. I mean, if you go to the small communities, Muslim, you go to Zongo communities, the kind of hurt that people will talk to you about, the ordeal that they've suffered in marriages, the struggles, the efforts they make, and then sometimes, fortunately or unfortunately, when the relationship or the marriage doesn't work, then they walk away with nothing. People, these are domestic settings, and people even go to court, and this is what they are getting. So it's a big societal issue. What exactly is happening from your own viewpoint that some of these things are taking such strong root in our society?
I don't don't think it's necessarily new. I think what's happening is just more of like a societal spotlight on it. But women being like disadvantaged out of marriages is like a tale as old as time. So I think what is happening also that I think is women kind of like are becoming more aware of the disadvantages that they are put at when it comes to like marriages and just like the work that it demands or the effort that it demands that they put in and just the return on investment, even though apparently now it's not an investment anymore. But with the return on investment, a lot of women are realizing that it's not worth it. And a lot more women also, I think what's happening, are talking about their experiences, which is very important because for a very long time, there's been this sort of caveat in our society where it's like, you don't have to speak bad of your marriage because you're ruining the sanctity of the relationship. So a lot of women used to suffer in silence, for lack of a better word. And now, because women are getting more empowered to speak out, we have people realizing that, oh, so this isn't as great as it's been marketed to us. Like this institution has very little return on investment for us because look at this woman that, because people are going to look at how long she suffered with this person. And she's only like walking away with like mega if we compare it to what at least what we know could be possible for her, right? So I think it's a combination of women coming to the realization that this isn't as beneficial to us as it could be, or maybe it should be considering the effort we put in. A lot of women being more empowered to speak about their experiences, and then like they're just realizing that okay, and the more we talk about this, the more other people who haven't gotten into it are going to realize or make much better decisions, really. So I think that's like what's happening. It is not new that women are disadvantaged in marriage. It's just a lot more spotlight, a lot more women speaking up. And I think that's why it's very important that women get empowered, both financially, economically, socially. Because what it does, it puts them at a place where they can make decisions that actually benefits them. Because I doubt that if the woman that Joanna is now saw the man that Richard was then, she would ever get with him. But like women are sold this dream of like, if you build with a man, you'll be more valuable. Whereas now the conversation is like women building themselves. So I just think that like that's the change that we are seeing, and I think it has to continue because it's very, very important.
Carl, I want to hear you on that important aspect of, the point Shaba makes about building and empowering people in marriages so that they themselves build things of their own. But of course, it doesn't stop still the idea that people are still being cheated in marriages. And this goes sometimes both, of course, generally speaking, if you have to be very honest, women suffer more when it comes to this, but there are still men, some out there who suffer from this.
So, Kwaku, I think if you're talking about building, I think it gets very complicated if you're talking about building yourself separately in a marriage, because the whole point of marriage is that you are commingling your life, right? So you are living together, you are sharing your finances, you're sharing your dreams, you're working together to build a family and a business. And this lady sounds like somebody who was actually working, again, allegedly, she had a job initially. She did contribute. She considers herself a co-founder to his business, as well as raising his children. She actually doesn't sound like somebody who was just, kind of uneducated, not knowing what she's about, just kind of went into it blind and is now suddenly coming up. She doesn't sound like that at all. She sounds like an educated woman who was working. Perhaps they made the decision together, and now she's asking for what she considers to be her due. Now, like I said, you may consider the 50 million to be too much, but the chasm between the 50 million and the 300,000 is just, it's quite ridiculous to me. Recently I remember watching a story online. I think it was there was a story about a Nigerian tech founder who had started his business with investments of about $30,000 equivalent, right? And he'd worked in the business for how long, grown his business, recently had an IPO, it was worth millions. He was talking millions now. He was talking about how, he actually talked about how he co-founded it with his wife and her contribution. But aside from that, he was talking about how he got a few friends to contribute to that $30,000. And how some of those friends who had contributed, I mean, not that much today, but in those days, were now worth millions because their investment had grown. So already the concept that, because a woman in a marriage, or a man, like I said, but it's mostly women who kind of, are considered to have not contributed that much financially, comes in and is contributing domestic work and is contributing a relatively small amount. Therefore, is only entitled to a very, very minute amount. And like I said, according to the judgment, he has a number of houses, at least 3 houses. And instead of giving her one house, you give her 1/3 of a house, allocating the rooms. How does that work? She lives there with the children. How does that work? So she's only allowed in those rooms and she can only walk along the corridor and live in it just, I just think that, and like I said, while you cannot draw a straight line between some of the comments the judge makes and his judgment. To say to this lady, oh, you're beautiful, you can get married again. To me, what I read from that is that he's suggesting that the reason why she wants all this money is because she's looking for a man to take care of her, looking for this man to take care of her. So if that's what you want, then why don't you find another man to take care of you? Which is rather offensive. And I find it a bit disingenuous for the other panelist, I'm sorry, I forget his name, to try and argue anything other than that. Because she is asking for a portion of the money that she feels she's entitled to, and you are telling her that, no, you're beautiful, you can get married again. What does that have to do with anything? Really?
Frank, you just had some shots fired at your way. How do you respond?
All right, so thank you. So, like I said earlier, the judge was just trying to arrive at the alimony to give. And I said earlier that in arriving at this, the court also assesses the future financial vulnerability of the claimant, who is the lady in this picture. And in doing that, the judge can't do that in vacuum. You understand? The judge needs to look at a lot of things like the age, like your health, your social standing. Because if you are moving out of marriage and let's say you are 65, obviously the judge should award you more, because at that age you are vulnerable. You can't go to work, you can't remarry. There are a lot of things that you are going to lose at that age. And so if the man has so much, it is only proper that you are given enough to be able to cater for you till death do you part. But in this case, we are looking at someone who is relatively younger. I'm not sure the lady in question.
I want you to reconcile these two things for me. If the judge in one breath says marriage is not an investment, then what if Madame Joanna Quay married again and the other person she married was not, say, a person of a lot of means? Well, because how can the judge tell who Madame Joanna Quay may want to marry if she decides to marry again, and what that person may have or may not have? Because that is a secondary matter within the specifics of the facts before the judge. It's about this.
And sorry, Kwaku, and with what he's saying, right? If a judge can tell, I don't know how old the woman is, I'm just going to assume a 32-year-old woman, that marriage is not an investment. What's to say that a 65-year-old woman would not be told the same thing? Because she has also equally invested a lot of time. So I don't think the age of whoever is in the marriage is going to make any difference. And if it does, that's clearly ageism. And why would the law allow that?
Okay, so I was making a point. When it comes to such matters,
well, we clearly disagree with your point.
Emotional about it, we should actually look at the facts. You see, for me, the question that I keep asking is, what is the purpose for marriage? That is what we should be answering, because I don't believe that.
Could you please tell us what the purpose of marriage is? I think that we would all like to know.
There are so many reasons why people marry.
So if you are told that, for instance, Madame Joanna Quay financed Mr. RNAQ in 2009 when he was going to London to further his education and back, before he came back, set up this company together, which she was a shareholder until at some point her name was taken over of the shareholder list. And if you look at the court documents, RNAQ suggests that it's because this Bank of Ghana had said that because she did not have a university degree, she could not be a director of the company. Although her name
mean,
remained in the shareholders
please.
up until a very long time before later. Of course, there are sergeants of forgery, but that is not our discussion here. But if you are still told that Madam Joanna Quay gave out resources of her own to Mr. RNAQ, go to the UK, study, come back, let's build our life together, will that change the premise of some of the things you've said?
When it comes to the company law and then all of that, the main focus, or where the one that is lucrative, has to do with the shareholding. You are the ones who actually get the returns, the dividends and all of that. When it comes to being a director, you are only spearheading the activities of the company, you understand? So yes, because of a level of education, she may not have had the opportunity to be the director, but at least from what's the ruling, we are aware that she still has shares in the company. And so I'm even sure that the judge looked at all of this, because if you have shares in this multi-million company, it means that you are okay.
Shares, as we know in law, it's a property. So
exactly.
If it's a property that was acquired during the subsistence of a marriage, then you can actually allot that. You can actually share that. But of course, the judge had his own reason.
Again, you made mention of the fact that she contributed so much when Richard Quay was out of the country and all of that. I'm sure when they went to court, if your lawyer argued so well, and if you could actually substantiate those facts, I'm sure that the judge will look at all of those. But I was also making a point about the importance of marriage, or the reason why people even marry. Marriage, basically, as we know, is for reproduction, it's for companionship, it's for family formation and all of that. Personal growth is a part, and no one can sit anywhere and tell us that this woman has not evolved. Because as we may be aware, if she didn't even have a degree before they got married, and today she holds a master's and all of that, then there's some level of personal growth. We can't just say that she also lost so much in the marriage. That is why I always advise people that you are not supposed to revolve your life around the man. You are supposed to also develop yourself, empower yourself, so that, because you always have to play the role of the devil's advocate, so that, because divorce, like we always say, is part of marriage. In as much as you go in there with a positive mind, you should also understand that the worst can happen. So when you go there, you need to strike a balance with you ensuring the formation of the family and empowering yourself, so that in the situation where something like this happens, you won't find yourself wanting. Thank you.
There's a lot to still pour over. We've got a lot of messages that we're about to bring you. 055 1111997 055 1111997. If you have a lot of WhatsApp messages for us, please do send it to us. We'll read it for you. My colleague Stephen Mensah is joining me with some WhatsApp messages. Stephen, what are people saying? Who are they agreeing with? Who are they disagreeing with?
Kwaku, a lot of varying opinions on this. Samuel says, it's difficult to believe that money didn't play a part in this judgment. It's sad to say, but this judgment doesn't make sense.
Well, that is his view, but of course,
the lady
judge
should appeal.
Well, we know an appeal has already been filed, and we understand that Godfrey Dame, the former Attorney General, is now the counsel for Madam Joanna Quay. So,
Dominic says, the panel ladies are being quite emotional about the divorce case. They focused on the woman taking care of the home and children, making it seem like the man only worked and didn't care about his family. But let's be honest, who was paying the children's school fees, rent, clothing, feeding and all other expenses? Yes, the man may have contributed a lot to the woman's current position, yet he is heavily criticized just because the court ruling seems to be in his favor. If the situation were different and he was their brother, I believe the narrative could have changed. Mm-hmm. The truth is, many men are not treated fairly in marriage, and in most cases, it favors women more. Let's be realistic, and the judges issues fairly. That said, fairness should be applied to both sides. I do not support any decision that treats either partner unjustly.
Let me take this one. It says, so who says when a woman accepts to marry a man, she's doing him a favor? Two individuals of different genders mutually agree to come together to build their life, and the notion is formed that a woman is giving her all to the marriage. What of the man? Was he sleeping throughout the marriage? The issue ought to be addressed on merit. If in a particular issue it is known that the man specifically directed the woman to stay home to attend to the family, then it will be incumbent on the man to give the woman her rightful due when the marriage hits the rock. Let's not offer the same bounty to all women in marriages when the relationship collapses, including the lazy ones. And then this final one from Samuel says, it is difficult to believe that money didn't play a part in this judgment. Oh, no. Well, Samuel, we can't talk about money and all of that. So there's a lot of this one say, hey, in fact, GM, you do 649 GM by this time. And then this one says, Kwaku, what if the court determined that RNQ became a billionaire not when he was in the marriage? Richard has not been a wealthy man for 16 years. Women are too emotional when it comes to alimony, etc. Let's be factual. So those are your messages coming in. We'll try and see if we can get a couple of them more before we go. Let's come around the table and then let's start wrapping up. Carla, there's a lot of messages we are getting about, and the judge, it goes back to the point made by the judge about what do we call it? Marriage not being an investment. And there are those men who would say strongly and forcefully that there are so many women who think divorce is an opportunity to extract as much as they can from property that maybe the man had already made prior to the marriage, or even made during the subsistence of the marriage, without they contributing a lot. And I remember this conversation when the judgment came out. We were having it with a friend and I was talking about how the top 3 richest women on the world richest list were all rich because of divorce. Talking about Mackenzie, Bezos, and also Bill Gates and the wife, and all of those people. Do you accept any premise that there are certain people who feel, or women who feel that divorce is an attempt to extract as much as possible?
She doesn't.
Well, let Carla answer, then I'll come to Baba.
First of all, let me just address. First of all, it seems like most of the messages that came in were men, if not all. They were all men, right? I didn't hear any women's name.
Yes.
Number 2, let me address that myth, the idea that women are quote unquote emotional. Men are just as emotional as women. They just present it differently. Number 3, I'm a lawyer, so the things I'm saying are not out of emotion. I'm looking at the situation, and I am capable of emotion just like anybody else, but I'm not emotionally invested in this story. I don't know them, right? So, yes, look, there may be women who go into relationships, whether marriages or otherwise, purely for financial gain. There are also men who go into relationships purely for financial gain. Then, men love to bring up the examples of Mackenzie Bezos, etc. Like I said, those are outliers. The men talking are never going to be faced with that situation. Let's be realistic. They are not. So I'm not even going to address that, right? If you want to take this case as a starting point, she was married to him for 16 years from when she was young. Are you suggesting that a woman is going to go into a marriage with somebody who didn't have much, according to him, at that time, right? And stay with him for 16 years and have 3 children with him just for money? I mean, it is ludicrous. What are you basing that on? And while he built up himself in that marriage, and she did too, she allegedly, according to her, helped him fund his businesses and found his business, etc. Right? And now you are saying that she's divorcing him just for money? What are you basing that on? Because that seems to be an emotional analysis you're making. Why would you think that somebody would be married to somebody for 16 years? Then did he marry her for 16 years just to cash out? Like, what was his reason? So I think, let's stop all that, nonsense about people are being emotional. People are being factual. And the fact that 2 people have come together and gotten married, and they are now breaking up. They got together young. They built something, they plural, built something up during that time. And one of them who did not get that much financially because she wasn't working to the same extent outside the home is asking for a reasonable amount. I don't think is unfair, right? Yeah. Like I said, you don't have to get 50 million, but 300,000 CDs. How much did he spend on that his party? I bet it was at least 300,000 CDs.
Well, I mean, if you bring in the Tanzanian artist class on 300.
Exactly. So really.
Yeah, but Shaba, I want to hear from you on that, and then let me come to Frank, and then let's wind down.
You want to hear me? First of all, I don't even have a problem with women being emotional. Like, what harm has?
But also on the conversation about the fact that maybe women may be going into marriages with an end in sight and trying to extract as much as possible. And all.
First of all, statistically, how many women have gone out of marriages and benefited? How many men have enough money to part with women and actually pay them anything?
I'm not sure I have that
communities.
data.
How many women from our communities are actually like getting out of marriages and becoming better because they made so much money from the marriage? It is ridiculous. In fact, preposterous that a lot of men are beginning to hold on to this like narrative that women are going to go into marriages with them and then leave them and take all that they have. What? The single one bedroom and one Toyota Vitz that they have? Like, let's stop being ridiculous. Like, nobody. First of all, if women were going to go into marriage to make money, they might as well for themselves to actually take. So obviously, I don't buy that. Again, and truly, there are people who go into relationships, regardless of marriage. I think I'm just echoing Carla's point. Regardless of marriage or relationships, for financial gains, both men and women. You don't see women talking about, oh, men are coming to us to divorce us and make our money. And yet, so there's a lot of societal conditioning with the way that we speak about gender and the way that we interact with gender in our society. And I think that is the root of a lot of these problems.
Yeah.
And secondly, like we cannot. I think one of the guests made a comment about how you don't know for sure if like the man had told the woman to stop. Like, I mean, we know for sure she was doing domestic work, but how do we not know if the man was doing the two things are for sure. We both know statistically, societally, the party that is most likely to do the most domestic work in the marriage is a woman. However, and that is for sure, that is something that we both can agree is for sure. What you and I cannot agree on is the fact that the men are taking care of the family, men are doing their duties. The percentage of men that are not doing their duties in marriage is much higher than the percentage of women that are not doing their duties. How many families do you and I know that have fathers in there, and yet the mothers are doing the cooking and taking care of the women? So you cannot actually say, oh, but we don't know if the woman was doing the domestic work and the man was paying the fees. We know because that is the society we live in. So we cannot continuously be cheating women out of their time, their youth, and then when it comes for us to like pay them for their work and investment, we say, oh, you're a gold digger, you are yada yada yada. Like, it is unfair, and that is why the birth rates are declining, and there's a male loneliness epidemic, and it will continue.
Really?
And I pray it forever does continue. Yes, women are no longer going to partner with men, and men are continuously going to be lonely, because this is how they choose to treat people that stay with them for 16 years. Who is going to do that anymore? Nobody.
Right. Okay, Frank. Do you have, as a last word on this, do you have any real concern that some women may be trying to cheat out men with these divorce settlement? Because I've seen some of the comments people have made on Facebook, your responses to them. Do you have a real concern that some men may have become victims in some of the demands women make of them when it's time for a divorce?
Sure, I do. And because of our field of work, a lot of people normally reach out to us before they reach out to the lawyers themselves. Because of familiarity, they reach out to you sharing their marital issues and the fact that they want to divorce. And so what are their chances? And I can tell you on a fact that out of, let's say, 100 women who have come to me, I can say that about 80% of them, anytime they come for legal advices, the question they ask you, so what are the merits? What am I going to get if I should go for a divorce? Am I going to lose this? What am I going to gain? It is not about peace of mind, which they mostly project when these issues are happening. Most of the times, they are looking out for what they are going to get. And let's be frank with ourselves. We've been in the university and all of that. As even in level 100, I remember there was a time where when you were a man at the University of Ghana and didn't have an iPhone, I think iPhone was new on campus, didn't have an iPhone, you would lose your woman. I remember losing a girlfriend because I didn't have an iPhone, but someone else had. Women have always...
Just sounds like you don't have...
I'm just applying this to real life issues. Women, how many women have married men who are poor? Let's be frank. If we are going to statistics,
many,
but
and there's so many.
Can you look around you? Women marrying mechanics. Come on.
Yes, just like you said. You see, we have to look at the percentage. We can't just make blanket statements like that. If you compare that to the number of women who have picked, number of men who have picked women from the roadside, made them people, you would realize that statistically, men have done so well. And
made them into picking machines, made them into what people.
You and I know, Kwaku, I'm not being gender biased, but you and I know that when we sit as men, we know. Money will let you know that women don't even look at beauty, they don't look at potentials anymore. All they look at is what the man is able to offer when he dish his hands into the pocket.
It's also because of the experience they've had with seeing their parents, the struggles they went through with men, and where they left them off. So they say, well, why would I build someone up from scratch to top, and then the person will abandon me and go for something else, when I could just go for what is ready?
Exactly. So
maybe they also have their own money as well.
So it affirms my point that they go in for the money. There's a motive that they're just going in for personal growth. Even these days, I have people who just come to you, tell you that they're ready to make children with you once you pay them. It's always about money. And
Tina sends a message, says, "Say, do you have a sister?" That's Tina. Tina is asking if you
Yes, I do have a sister. And I always advise her to go in for a responsible man. Because you can't even tell who loves you. But a responsible man understands that if I have a child with you, I need to take care of the child. And if I'm taking care of the child, I need to take care of you. Because when you're in a good position, if you're healthy. No, I've always said this.
I hope she never takes your advice. I hope she never does.
This argument doesn't mean that I'm going to give my wife 5,000.
I'm talking about RNAQ.
Exactly. See, I can tell you for a fact, I have close ties with the family. And I can tell you for a fact that the man is going to give more than. But he wants to eschew the fact that you feel entitled to his money, but beyond the court process, he's going to make sure that he gives the children a lot. But he wants you to understand that his money is his money.
Okay,
it is not yours, so you're not entitled to it. So
he sounds controlling then. So he's just being controlling.
Obviously, no man will make children and then just let them move like that with 5,000 cities when he has so much. I know for a fact. I know I have close ties, and I can tell you that he's going to do. In fact, he has been.
So then you're a PR mouthpiece.
Just to send across a message,
yeah.
And that is against social policy. No social policy. They just said that we're supposed to make this projection. We're supposed to eschew that kind of mindset in the minds of women that marriage is an avenue for them to make so much money. Thank you.
Interesting thoughts there. Let me do a couple of that's a few messages. This one said, let's give it to the women. The two female panelists are very intelligent. I don't agree with most of what they've said, but they've made intelligent arguments. Thank you very much. And this one, you sent a voice note. Perhaps we'll find some time and play it another time. And then there's another one from Francis in Accra. He says, this ruling is unfair and also very handy to address this new age. What do you mean it's fair or unfair? But you say unfair. We're about young women who have gone into marriage seeing it as a financial security, even as some guys doing it as well. We didn't see all of this in our parents' old years of marriage and journey. This ruling should be a lesson to all who are in marriage now and will be going into it until we all make it back to Jesus Christ. That's your message. And this one says, the panelists keep referring to the party he threw last year, which shows that their concern is largely focused on that event. I understand that some men can be irresponsible, but that many men have also become victims of gold digging. There's a big conversation about whether or not women are getting treated well in marriages just as men, and whether or not there's a lot that we have to do for ourselves. This matter has gone for appeal, and the three wise men at the Court of Appeal are going to have to deal with it. I suspect it to have to go to the Supreme Court again, because whoever comes out not victorious will go back to the Supreme Court. We'll go to the Supreme Court up there and see if he can change that. And when it gets there, it will ultimately end. Hopefully, we can get something that everyone can be excited about. My name is Kwaku Asante. This has been Ghana Connect. Thank you very much. Frank Quay, this is your debut on the show. I'll be looking forward to bringing you on and coming on and sharing your views. You share really interesting thoughts on your social media. Thank you very much, Shaib Abdul Rashid. And thank you very much, Kala Olympia, as always, for making it on Ghana Connect. I'll see you again.